The new school term at Gracefield High buzzed with excitement as students flooded the compound with laughter and energy. Tolu, a charming and popular SS2 student, walked into class with his usual swagger. Known for his effortless brilliance and football skills, he was admired by teachers and students alike. But his attention today was caught by someone new. Sitting quietly in the second row beside the window was ByVee, a transfer student from Ibadan. With her modest clothes, cornrowed hair, and a book always in hand, she carried herself with grace and quiet confidence. Tolu hadn't seen her smile yet, but something about her drew him in. During break time, Tolu approached her under the pretense of borrowing a pen. Their conversation was awkward at first, filled with stolen glances and nervous laughter. ByVee had heard about Tolu, the boy everyone warned girls to be careful of. But he was surprisingly respectful and funny. Day by day they talked more. Group assignments turned into long after-school chats and soon they were inseparable. Teachers even commented on how much ByVee seemed happier since Tolu started sitting beside her in class. And though she tried to guard her heart, ByVee was slowly falling for him. She never imagined she'd fall for someone like Tolu, the school's golden boy. But his attention felt real and his words always sweet. He started walking her home, bringing her puff-puff during break and writing little notes he slipped into her textbooks. Tolu, for the first time, felt something more than flirtation. He liked ByVee's mind, her kindness, and the way she made him want to be better. What started as a game was becoming something else, and neither of them could see what was waiting at the edge of their young, blooming love. By the second month of the term, Tolu's interest in ByVee had become the topic of whispers across the school. Some girls rolled their eyes, thinking she'd be just another name on his long list. But ByVee was different. She wasn't loud or flashy, and she didn't seem eager for his attention. That only made Tolu want her more. One Friday afternoon after prep, Tolu caught up with ByVee by the mango tree near the back fence, far from the teacher's eyes. He had seen her slip away with her novel like she always did during breaks. "You like to hide in?" he teased, sitting beside her. "Or you're hiding from me?" ByVee looked up, a soft smile tugging at her lips. "Maybe I just enjoy peace and quiet," she replied. Tolu grinned, undeterred. "Then let me be your peace." He brought her roasted groundnuts wrapped in old newspaper and offered to carry her books whenever they walked home. At first, ByVee laughed it off, suspecting a trap. But his persistence softened her. He wrote her poetry, simple, clumsy rhymes scribbled in the back of his notes. He even stole her school ID just to tease her and return it with a flower tucked in the pocket of her bag. Sometimes, after evening prep, he'd wait outside the gate and pretend to just be passing by, so he could walk her home and hold her hand under the streetlights. One evening, as rain began to drizzle, Tolu pulled her gently under a shed. They were both soaked, shivering and laughing. In that moment he looked into her eyes and whispered, "You've changed me, ByVee. I don't chase other girls anymore. I only want you." She looked away, heart pounding, unsure if she could believe him, but part of her already did. She was falling deeply and dangerously. It was during cultural day rehearsals that everything between Tolu and ByVee began to heat up. ByVee had been selected to play the lead role in a short drama, while Tolu was assigned to direct the sketch. The afternoons were filled with laughter, music, and creative chaos. But for them, every moment felt like a secret message passed between glances and soft touches. Tolu used every excuse to be near her. When she fumbled a line, he'd lean in too close while correcting her. His fingers would linger on her arm just a second longer than necessary. ByVee would pretend to roll her eyes, but her cheeks betrayed her. The tension between them was becoming harder to hide. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and the school grounds emptied, Tolu pulled her aside behind the assembly hall. "You always run when I try to talk to you alone," he said, his voice low. ByVee crossed her arms, feigning annoyance. "Because I know what you want," she said. "And what's that?" he asked, taking a step closer. She hesitated, eyes narrowing. "To make me like you, then leave like you've done to others." Tolu's expression softened. "ByVee, you're not like the others. I don't just like you, I think about you all the time. I even dream about you." Before she could speak, he leaned in and kissed her, softly, carefully. It wasn't rushed or boastful like she'd feared. It was slow, full of questions. When he pulled back, she didn't move away. For a few seconds they stood in silence, their hearts thudding like drums. That night, ByVee couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the moment over and over. Her body tingled, her heart confused. She had told herself she wouldn't fall for him, but it was already too late. And somewhere deep down she feared what loving Tolu could cost her. After that kiss behind the assembly hall, something changed between Tolu and ByVee. They started spending even more time together. Tolu would wait for her after every class, hold her hand boldly in the hallway, and even carry her bag sometimes. Everyone in school noticed. Some girls whispered jealous things while a few boys shook their heads, saying ByVee was falling for trouble. But ByVee didn't care. She felt special, chosen. Tolu made her feel like the only girl in the world. One quiet afternoon, they skipped club activities and snuck into the empty home economics room. Tolu had found the key from the back of the staff room. He said it was just to chill and talk privately. ByVee was nervous but followed him anyway. Inside, the room smelled of flour and chalk. The windows were half open and the air was warm. Tolu sat on one of the wooden tables and pulled ByVee between his legs gently. "You trust me, right?" he asked, brushing her hair behind her ear. She nodded slowly. "I don't want to just play with you," he said softly. "I've never felt this way before." His hand was on her waist now, firm but not forceful. Her heart raced. She didn't want to disappoint him. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and she didn't stop him. A small voice in her head warned her, but the way he held her, the way he whispered her name, it drowned out everything else. After that day, their meetings became more secret, more intimate. They met behind the school library, in the back of the staff quarters, even under the staircase near the science block. ByVee told herself it was love. But sometimes late at night when she lay in bed, a strange fear crept into her chest. Was she giving too much? Was Tolu truly hers, or just pretending? The Harmattan breeze had started to blow. School uniforms became dusty faster, lips cracked, and everyone rubbed Vaseline to keep their skin from drying. But ByVee wasn't thinking about the weather. For days now her body felt strange. Her stomach turned every morning and she had lost interest in food. At first she thought it was just stress or a little illness. But when her period didn't come the second month, panic set in. She sat behind the girls' hostel, her face pale and eyes wide with worry. Her best friend, Ada, noticed something was wrong. "ByVee, what's going on?" she asked gently. After a long silence, ByVee whispered, "I think I'm pregnant." Ada gasped and dropped her biscuit. "Pregnant? Are you sure?" ByVee nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. "I've missed it twice now. And I feel it." Later that evening, ByVee pulled Tolu aside near the school's back gate, where they usually met. Her hands were cold and shaky. "Tolu, I need to talk to you," she said. His face lit up like usual, but when she spoke the words, "I think I'm pregnant," his smile disappeared. He blinked, took a step back and scratched his head. "Wait, what? Are you sure?" he asked, eyes darting around like he was searching for a way out. ByVee nodded again, her voice breaking. "I'm scared, Tolu. What are we going to do?" But Tolu didn't have any answers. He looked at her like she was a stranger. "You have to be sure first. Maybe it's nothing. Don't tell anybody yet," he said quickly, already moving away. That night, ByVee cried herself to sleep. The boy who once held her hand with so much love had suddenly gone cold. She felt alone, afraid, and more than anything, betrayed. Days passed and Tolu stopped coming to their usual meeting spots. ByVee waited behind the library on Monday. He didn't show. On Tuesday she lingered after prep. Nothing. When she finally saw him in the hallway, he barely looked her way. The same boy who once wrote her poems now walked past like she was invisible. At first, ByVee thought maybe he was just scared. She gave him space, hoping he'd come around. But instead, things got worse. In class, Tolu started sitting with his friends again, laughing loudly, cracking jokes like nothing had happened. When ByVee approached him after a test, his tone was sharp. "Why are you always following me around? Can't I breathe?" he snapped, loud enough for others to hear. A few students looked back, giggling. ByVee stood frozen, embarrassed. Her heart ached, not just from the rejection but from the humiliation. This wasn't the Tolu she fell for. During break she saw him talking to Amina, a pretty girl from SS3. They laughed and shared a drink and Tolu didn't even glance her way. Ada squeezed ByVee's hand. "You need to talk to a teacher or your aunt," she whispered. "You can't go through this alone." But ByVee was scared. What would her aunt say? How would she face the shame? Her parents were gone. Her aunt had taken her in, hoping she'd become something great. And now this? Later that week, ByVee caught Tolu near the school field. She tried once more. "Tolu, please. I need you. I can't face this alone." But he looked her straight in the eye and said, "That's your problem, not mine. Don't drag me into it." ByVee felt something inside her break. The boy who once promised her forever had turned his back like she was nothing. And just like that, the sweet love she thought she had was gone, replaced by cold silence and regret. By the end of the week, the rumors had started. Someone must have overheard ByVee and Tolu arguing near the school field. Now whispers followed her everywhere. Girls stared. Boys chuckled when she passed. Notes were passed in class with her name scribbled in bold. One even said, "Gracefield's Virgin Mary has fallen." ByVee tore it up with shaky hands, fighting back tears. She walked into the school clinic one afternoon, hoping to confirm what she already feared. The matron, a stern woman with sharp eyes, looked at her curiously. "You're very young," she muttered after the test. "This isn't how you want to start life, my dear." ByVee sat quietly, her world spinning. It was confirmed. She was pregnant. When she stepped out of the clinic, Tolu was standing under a tree nearby, hands in his pocket. She rushed to him, eyes red. "It's true," she said. "I'm pregnant, Tolu. I need you." But his face remained cold. "Don't tell anyone I'm involved," he said flatly. "I have plans for my life, ByVee. I can't ruin it because of a mistake." ByVee was too stunned to speak. A mistake? That's what he called her? What they shared. "You said you loved me," she whispered. "You begged me to trust you." Tolu looked away. "It was just high school fun. Don't turn it into something serious." Tolu avoided her completely after that. His friends cheered him on, calling him sharp guy. But deep inside, something in him was unsettled. Still he said nothing, and ByVee was left to carry it all, the shame, the blame, and the baby, alone. The news of ByVee's pregnancy spread through Gracefield High like wildfire. By the next day, teachers began treating her differently. Mr. Ade, who used to praise her in literature class, didn't even call her to answer questions anymore. Madame Dupe, the hostel matron, watched her every move like she was a criminal. Students whispered behind her back. Some even pointed and laughed when she walked past. On Friday morning, ByVee was summoned to the principal's office. Her legs trembled as she walked through the hallway, eyes heavy with shame. Her aunt was already there, seated stiffly with red, swollen eyes. The principal didn't waste time. "This school stands for discipline and moral excellence," he began. "You have brought shame to the name of this institution. We cannot allow you to remain." ByVee broke down, begging with tears streaming down her cheeks. "Please sir, I'll do anything. Let me write my WAC. Just give me a chance." But her words fell on deaf ears. The decision had already been made. She was expelled. Her belongings were packed in silence that evening. No goodbye hugs. No comforting words. Not even from Ada, who was too scared to be associated with her. As she walked out of the hostel with her small Ghana must-go bag, she felt 1,000 eyes burning into her back. That moment would stay with her forever. Life outside school wasn't easier. Her aunt refused to speak to her for days. "After all I did for you, this is how you repay me?" she would say with bitterness. The small shop they ran together lost customers. Neighbors gossiped and pointed fingers. Some church members even crossed to the other side of the road when they saw her. ByVee stopped smiling. She stayed indoors most times, staring out the window, rubbing her stomach, wondering how something that started with love had turned into such deep pain. Her dreams of becoming a lawyer? Gone. Her plans of making her late parents proud? Scattered. She had fallen, and there was no one to catch her. The first few weeks after her expulsion felt like a blur to ByVee. She spent most of her time at home, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, her heart heavy with despair. The sound of her aunt's angry footsteps echoed through the house, and the walls seemed to close in on her. Her aunt would snap at her over small things. "Why is the house so dirty?" Or, "When are you going to get your life together?" But the anger in her voice wasn't even the worst part. It was the silence, the coldness, the way her aunt avoided her eyes. "Don't you think I'm ashamed enough?" ByVee asked one evening, her voice trembling. Her aunt didn't reply. Instead, she turned her back and continued cooking, muttering about how she didn't need this burden. ByVee's heart cracked every time her aunt said something like that. She had already lost the one person who had tried to raise her with love, and now even she was pushing her away. Outside, people in the neighborhood had started to avoid her. If she walked down the street, heads turned, mothers pulled their children closer, and older women whispered under their breath. The shame was everywhere. The shop where ByVee's aunt had sold food became quieter, and fewer people came. Word had spread quickly that the sweet, quiet girl from the next street had fallen pregnant, and no one wanted to be part of the scandal. One day, while walking to the small corner store to buy some flour, ByVee overheard two women gossiping. "I heard the father is that popular boy Tolu. What a shame. That boy had so much potential. And now this poor girl will be ruined forever." Another woman responded, "Well, he's not the one left to deal with it. It's that girl who has to carry the shame for the rest of her life. Those words hit ByVee harder than anything her aunt had said. She wanted to scream, to confront them, to tell them they didn't understand. But she stayed silent. She had nothing left to say. She was just a girl with a future that had been taken from her. At night, ByVee's body ached from the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her pregnancy wasn't easy. She couldn't sleep for more than a few hours without waking up to a wave of nausea. Her back hurt, her legs were swollen, and her energy had drained away. The constant feeling of loneliness gnawed at her. There were no friends left to turn to, no one to talk to. She had pushed everyone away, and now no one even looked back. One evening, while sitting in her small room, ByVee looked down at her belly. She couldn't help but feel a strange mix of love and fear. There was a tiny life growing inside her, a life that would depend on her, but she couldn't even take care of herself. How could she possibly be ready to raise a child? How could she give it the life it deserved when she had nothing? Her phone buzzed on the bed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Ada. "I'm sorry, ByVee, but I can't hang out with you anymore. People are talking and it's just too much. I hope you understand." Tears welled up in ByVee's eyes. She had lost everything. Friends, family, her education, and now even her only remaining friend was gone. She wasn't just abandoned by Tolu, she was abandoned by everyone. Alone, with nothing left but a future that seemed as dark as the room she sat in. ByVee had never imagined that it would come to this. One morning, after weeks of cold silence and harsh words from her aunt, the breaking point came. Her aunt stood in the doorway of ByVee's room, arms crossed and face hard. "I can't keep you here anymore," she said, voice full of bitterness. "You've brought too much shame to this house. You're not a child anymore. Go find somewhere else to stay or fend for yourself." ByVee stood frozen, her heart shattering in her chest. Her aunt didn't even look at her as she packed her things. It felt like a cruel twist of fate. She was no longer the innocent girl who had come to live with her aunt, hoping for a better life. She was just a problem to be discarded. With nowhere else to turn, ByVee had no choice but to leave. She packed the few belongings she had, a worn-out pair of shoes, some clothes, and a small, frayed bag. She stepped out of the house, her pregnant belly now a constant reminder of the heavy burden she carried. The world outside seemed more hostile than ever. She spent the first few nights sleeping on benches in a nearby park. The cold cement and harsh winds were a cruel contrast to the warmth of her aunt's home that now felt like a distant memory. But there was no time for self-pity. ByVee knew she had to find a way to survive. The next morning, with nothing but the street and her empty stomach, ByVee ventured into the crowded market. She had no skills, no family to lean on, and no way to go back. The women at the market eyed her warily as if she didn't belong. But when ByVee asked around for work, an older woman who ran a small vegetable stand took pity on her. "You can sell these tomatoes for me," she said. "It's not much, but it'll get you something." ByVee nodded, her heart full of desperation. She took the basket of tomatoes, the weight of her pregnancy making every step harder. As she wandered the busy streets, shouting her sales pitch, she felt the eyes of strangers on her. Not the friendly, curious looks she used to get as a high school girl, but cold, judgmental stares. Some customers sneered at her, and others ignored her completely. But she kept going, dragging her tired body along the bustling streets, trying to sell a few tomatoes here and there, just to survive. Days turned into weeks. ByVee's hands became rough and calloused from carrying heavy baskets, her body aching from long hours in the sun. The hunger gnawed at her constantly, but there was no time to complain. Every day she woke up early and went back to the streets, trying to make enough money to buy something to eat, and to prepare for the child growing inside her. She couldn't stop thinking about her baby. How would she provide for it? How could she give it a better life than the one she was now living? One evening, as she sat on the sidewalk after a long day of hawking, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around, expecting to see a potential customer, but it was a group of teenagers laughing at her. One of them, a girl from her former school, sneered as she looked at ByVee's swollen belly. "So this is how far you've fallen?" the girl mocked. From the smart, innocent girl to a street hawker with a bastard child. ByVee's heart sank, but she didn't cry. Not anymore. She had no tears left. The shame, the hurt, the isolation, they had all been building inside her for so long that now, there was nothing left but a numb emptiness. That night, she slept under a thin blanket in a corner of the market, her thoughts drifting between dreams of a life she had once hoped for and the reality of her broken, hopeless world. 10 years had passed since ByVee left the streets behind. The girl who once wandered aimlessly, broken and lost, had transformed into a woman who knew exactly who she was. She had built herself up from nothing, a mother, a survivor, and a force to be reckoned with. ByVee stood in front of her small but successful fashion boutique in the heart of Lagos, watching as customers entered and exited. The shop was busy today, filled with vibrant fabrics and unique designs that ByVee had spent years perfecting. She had always loved fashion, and in the years since her struggles, she had poured her heart into creating beautiful clothes that told stories. Today those stories had earned her respect, not just from her customers but from her peers as well. Her son Adedeo was now 10 years old, a smart, lively boy with her eyes and his father's smile. ByVee often thought about Tolu but only for a moment. He had faded into the background of her life, just another ghost of the past. Adedeo was her focus now, her pride, her joy. She worked hard to give him everything she hadn't had, a stable home, a bright future.